Hi, everybody. Welcome to Inside AWAI, breaking into the lucrative world of ghostwriting. I'm Katie Yakel, AWAI's Executive Director, and I'm thrilled to have with me today these three very accomplished ghostwriters. I'm just going to do quick bios, and anything that you care to add, please do. Laura Gale is, she's actually the editor of our ghostwriting training program, which is fabulous, and written nearly 30 books now and for over 10 years. Plus you do editing and coaching and dozens of other projects, which I'm excited to hear about these other projects as well. You are the best-selling author of 2 books, and you live in Bath, UK with your husband and 20-month-old son, who is just wowing you with his language, his vocabulary growth. So we're really excited to have you here.
Thank you.
Also, we have Jen Adams, who is a marketer and ghostwriter with more than 15 years of experience helping companies to grow and thought leaders to share their stories. I love this, Jen. On behalf of your clients, you've played the voice of everyone from a German motorcycling expert to doomsday survivalists to HR consultants and high-end private lenders. I mean, how fun is that to be able to take on these personalities and these personas and really bring them to life? This past year, you left solo ghostwriting for a ghostwriting agency experience and then leverage that into a development role with a new financial publishing startup. So I definitely want to get into that. Jen serves as the director of the Professional Writers Alliance, which is a fabulous organization that is focused on helping writers grow their writing businesses. And Jen says the odds are good she's in the car enthusiastically helping her 2 boys explore the best of summer, life, and youth sports. We also have Liz Farr. Liz spent 15 years working as an accountant in the Albuquerque area. She's been a CPA since 2005, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm talking about you like you're not here, but Liz started writing part-time in 2015 and has been writing full-time since early 2018. Liz writes blog posts, articles, white papers, case studies, and books for accountants and tech firms in the accounting space. Her specialty is ghostwriting for coaches, consultants, and CEOs who want to move accountants into the future. So again, I love how you took this background and turned it into this amazing ghostwriting career. Let's see, 5 of your past and current clients have been named to Accounting Today's annual list of 100 most influential in accounting. And your words have been in Forbes, CFO.com, Accounting Today, the Journal of Accountability, and much more. When Liz is not writing or reading, she's practicing Tai Chi and Qigong. So thank you and welcome to all of you for this conversation about why ghostwriting is one of the most exciting and surprising ways to earn a living as a paid writer. We touched on some of this. There's memoirs, there's business books, blog posts, there's content from thought leaders. There's so much more, and the demand is just growing, and it's all about stepping into someone else's voice and bringing their story to the world, which you all have done beautifully. Some of the things we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about how our panel got started in ghostwriting. We're going to talk about the types of projects that are out there for ghostwriters. We're going to talk about what clients are looking for and how to stand out. And we actually have somebody joining us in just about 30 or 40 minutes now who owns an agency, and he's going to give his perspective on what he looks for when hiring ghostwriters. We're going to talk about how the payment works, how the money flows, and we're going to give you some tips for getting started quickly and confidently. So that's my agenda for today. And I'm open to other things that come up and anything that you want to talk about. Laura, I know you were talking, you mentioned that you're really excited about LinkedIn and how it's helping you grow your business. So maybe we'll just start with that.
Sure. So recently a client approached me and said, would you also handle my LinkedIn for me? There's a whole bunch of stuff that has been posted. He was using an agency and they were just not getting his voice right. They were not really even consulting with him about the content. And it was the brand was just veering way off course. And so, I have never managed somebody's LinkedIn content before, but ultimately I sort of thought it's the same process, just in miniature. The process for getting the material is exactly the same. Interviewing is the same, whether it's for a book or for a short social post. Learning somebody's voice, understanding what drives them, what their business priorities are, all of that stuff is the same. And so it felt just like a really natural extension of the book projects. He wrote a book years and years ago, and that has been very successful for him. And now, especially, and I'm sure we'll talk about AI on this conversation at some point, but that is a really big deal in his industry. It's really affected how their workflows happen. And so there's a lot of material to work with. And so, it just felt like a very easy thing to kind of step into as a yes and to the book.
Yes, and I love that. That's great. So how did you get your very first ghostwriting gig? How did you end up on this path?
I have to be honest, that was pure serendipity. Nothing I did personally. Well, I did a lot of work in content marketing. I had worked in a publishing house as a publicist for several years, decided that cubicle life was not for me. And so I decided to start my own business. I originally was just doing content marketing for entrepreneurs in this little forum that I found online. And I worked with quite a few of them. And over time, built a little reputation there. One of them one day reached out and said, everybody says you write great blog posts. I saw you worked in publishing. Do you want to write a book for me? And I was like, look, guy, if you want to have that experiment with me, I will go there with you. But this would be my first time. So if you can treat it as an experiment, then I'm game. And he was down for that. So the rest is kind of history, because he was really happy with that. He got, all 5-star reviews on Amazon. He became a bestseller. He was able to sort of expand his business quite a bit, got a lot of high ticket clients off the back of people reading the book. So it was this huge success. And I thought couldn't believe how well it went, basically. And then he was very vocal about that in that forum. And then somebody else reached out, and then somebody else after that. And then it kind of just snowballed, and it just kept saying yes, basically. And again, it was, as Jen and Liz will say, all the projects are completely different. The voice is completely different. The angle is completely different. And I just felt like it was so exciting to always be working on something fresh. That was my biggest frustration with my previous type of work, is that it was the same all the time. And, I felt like I had to grow and to stretch your skills. Whereas with this, it was every time there was something new to master. And that felt just really exciting.
That's fabulous. I love that. So Liz, you were an accountant and you had decided to move into copywriting. And how did that morph into ghostwriting?
Well, sort of by accident, like Laura. The first time that I was aware that I was ghostwriting was when I saw one of the blog posts that I've written for a tech company, an accounting tech company, appear with somebody else's name attached to it. And it actually was the name of my contact there. And I thought, okay. So I guess I'm writing for him now under his name. So I took that into account as I wrote more articles, and sometimes they would have his name and sometimes somebody else's name. But after I'd been doing that for maybe a year, he said to me, hey, do you want to write a book? And I just thought, well, I've never done that. I have no idea what I'm doing. But he said, sure. And I said, well, sure. Yeah, I'll do that. So we had lots and lots of Zoom calls that I recorded and transcribed that I shaped into a book called The Controller's Code, which came out under the name of the CEO of this tech company. Another big client came my way because I wrote a little profile of him for the Journal of Accountancy. And then a couple months later, I saw that he'd made Accounting Today's top 100 most influential in
Mhm.
accounting. And so I reached out and said, hey, congratulations, well done. And he said, hey, I need your help. And so he sent me a link to a keynote he'd given, which I turned into first one article in his voice, and then expanded that into 4 more articles, and then expanded that into a book,
Wow.
which has now been published. And just a couple weeks ago, I gave a copy of it to the CEO of another accounting tech company, and she put up on LinkedIn, "Oh, this is my favorite book. I'm obsessing about this. I'm so happy about it. It's changing my life." And so that really warmed my heart that something I did was helping
Yeah.
somebody else move the profession ahead. So that's how I got started. It was by accident and just
Okay.
by saying yes.
All right. So we have a trend here going. We have 2 accidental
I
ghostwriters.
did it on purpose. I did it on
You
purpose.
did it on purpose. All right. Let's hear how you did it on purpose, Jen.
I did it on purpose because I wanted to make more money.
Okay. Well, that's the best.
I mean,
That's a
I had
very
the
good
most
reason.
altruistic motivations, advancing the profession, making the world a better place. No, I was familiar with the concept of ghostwriting because I had worked in HR before I became a writer. And a lot of times in a corporate setting, the role of HR is to make the manager look good or
Yes.
to make the CEO look good or sound good. Like HR is writing their slides. So I was familiar with the idea of doing work and my name was not on it. And then when I started freelancing, I wrote actually a lot of HR training materials. And again, like the idea of making a big guide, but my name wouldn't be on it. And at that point in the internet's history and marketing history, lead magnets were a big thing.
Yes.
And I was working with an agency and I was writing a lot of little lead magnets, like 20 to 30 page kind of things. And so if you think about a book, like a basic business book, it's, maybe 150 book pages, which is about 350 words a page for people who like to
Mhm.
count 300 to 350 words a page. So anyway, an official book would be like 5 lead magnets. So it didn't sound that unapproachable. And I had a client that I was doing a lot of work with, and we were trying to think of new marketing funnels that we could do. Like, what could we put out that would be hot and fresh and exciting? Because at that point, suddenly you looked around and everyone had a lead magnet.
Right.
So it was no longer distinctive. And I'm like, let's do a book. She's like, a book. Ooh, that's going to be a lot of work. And I'm like, no. It's just going to be like a lead magnet on steroids. And so let me emphasize, we did it not because it was going to be easy, but because we thought it was going to be really easy.
Right.
How a book is a little more robust than a lead magnet. By the time we made it nice, because a book will have things that lead magnets don't, or that other marketing materials don't.
Right.
And I would say, as people look at this, and even as you think about like ghostwriting a memoir, remember, for the people who are paying you for this, the book is a marketing tool for them.
Right.
Many times they're not trying to write some great artistic thing. They have a goal.
Right.
You sell another kind of seminar. They want to book more clients. They want to be considered a thought leader. They want the notoriety. They need something for LinkedIn. They want to get on TV. They have a purpose. The book is going to fill a purpose. So in this case, the book was going to be the beginning of a coaching journey. So the book to establish the expertise, and she wanted to use it to get speaking gigs as well. So we made this book, and it did okay. You know, it wasn't an Amazon bestseller, but it was something fresh we could talk about. We did a lot of publicity around it. The fun thing with a book also is how many upsells can go with a book, because often when you're asked to write the book, as a part of the process, your client will realize how many other things they desperately need written. They also need a press release. They need blog posts. They need social media content. They need their LinkedIn profile. They need their LinkedIn posts. They need, like, oh my God, who's going to do this? Right here.
Right. I'm in it. I'm
a very modest additional fee.
Right.
An ongoing retainer. You know, I could take on all of these things for you. So with that client, we started with one book, and I think by the end, among her friends and family and associates, I'd done like 5 or 6 books.
That's awesome.
And then I throughout my career, I've had a high need for variety. I like new and different.
Another theme we're hearing here.
And the chance to kind of immerse yourself in someone else for a while.
Yeah.
Is also, at this point in my life, very refreshing. A busy mom of 2 kids. I have a heavy caregiving load. Like, my life is a lot sometimes. And it's nice to get into the computer and be like, okay, who am I today?
Right.
I ride motorcycles through the German countryside and give you hidden gems about the best places to eat and stay. And it's such a lark. And then you turn off the computer and put on your life again.
Right.
But yeah, so I did it on purpose because it paid more than smaller projects.
And it had the benefit of creating more work, basically more projects.
Yes.
As somebody, I see Kat is asking what a lead magnet is. And so Jen, if you want to answer that.
Yeah, a lead magnet. I mean, at this point, you could think of them as like a teaser booklet.
Yes.
Lead magnet was a fancy name for like my 10-page guide to eco-friendly gardening.
It's what companies use in order to get people to raise their hand that, yes, they want to learn more about this. And it's often in the form of a free report or a little booklet or something like that. And from that is the start of the marketing funnel, the marketing process for many, many companies. So
journey. I'll use gardening one. I mean, my husband just came home with a little booklet, like how to stop flower drop on peppers. Like, it's a very specific little guide. It's like 10 pages. And then the last 3 pages are the other fertilizers, bits of garden gear, special water. Like, he got the guide for free.
Right.
I think he's ordered like $300 or $400 worth of the stuff that they talked about in the book.
Excellent. That was written by a copywriter, I betcha.
Oh yeah. You know, it's a beautiful handout there at the garden store. He's like, yes, this is a problem I have. I'm going to take this little guide because it's free. And then people are hooked on the thing on the back end.
So we've touched on, books obviously are a category unto themselves, but I do feel like we've already touched on LinkedIn posts, other marketing materials, speeches, PowerPoints. So Laura, I'll start with you. What are some of the other projects that you've either ghostwritten or your ghostwriting projects have led you to?
So a lot of people come to me thinking that they need a ghostwriter, but having one of 2 hangups. One is they've already tried writing a lot of stuff themselves and they can't let go of what they've written. And so at that point, it's much better for me to work with them as an editor to use that material that they have poured so much of themselves into to take that to the end of the process. So that's a really common one. Another one is coaching. So for a lot of people, it's really important that they themselves write the book. So that's a life goal. It's something that they want to feel really proud about. some people feel absolutely great about using a ghostwriter, and this is just, I think, a different in personality more than anything. But a lot of people come and they think like, I want the book to be done. I've got all these ideas, but I feel weird about the ghostwriting process. And so in that case, I think it's much better for them to achieve that life goal, and I can help them through that process. It's a bit of a black box publishing for people who are outside the world, whether you're going traditional publishing, self-publishing, hybrid publishing, which I really never recommend, but there's all of these different models. And so helping someone understand what all the steps are and what comes next and which bit needs to be worked on, it's just, the coaching is something that I do quite a lot of now. It's also a bit more accessible as a price point for a lot of people. Ghostwriting projects are big, right? And so they come with a big price ticket. But editing is kind of halfway between the two. Coaching's kind of at the lower end. And so it gives a lot more flexibility to be a ghostwriter primarily, but also offer some kind of related services.
I love that. I just see it as like kind of the spokes of the wheels, the ghostwriting's in the middle, and then there's all these other opportunities.
Yes.
Laura, you mentioned process, and I would like to hear, as briefly as possible, what all three of your processes are when you sit down to do a ghostwriting project. So Laura, I know you detail this in your training program, but if you could just kind of walk us through the 4 or 5 steps that are involved.
Okay, so everybody sits down when they're ready to write a book and starts writing, and that is way ahead of yourself. So that's kind of jumping in halfway through the process. So backing it up a little bit, the first thing you need to understand is who your reader is. So like Jen said, every book has a goal, right? And so you need to understand what your goal is, but who the person on the other end of that transaction is going to be. Because if you're writing it for everybody, you're writing it for nobody. It's exactly the same as copywriting. You have to have a really clear sense of who your ideal customer is, in this case, your ideal reader. You need to understand why they're coming to your client, what your client is specifically and uniquely capable of solving for them, the pain point they're experiencing, what they're trying to get out of reading this book. Once you understand that, and I recommend always having an actual person who fits that profile. So, I have a friend who I write nearly every book to because she's in business, she's super curious, she's always trying to get better at stuff, she's kind of an all-rounder. So I always write for her. And that helps a lot because I can imagine what she does and doesn't know, what she's driven by, what she doesn't really care about. And so that helps a lot with the next step, which is understanding kind of what the overarching message of the book is. And I call this your North Star. So this is the single concept that you can tack towards wherever you are in the process. So is this content going to fit with that North Star? Is this example going to work? Is this extra chunk of content that I feel really attached to, but maybe it's not quite the right fit for this particular book? Is that going to be distracting from that North Star idea? So you kind of have to start with these big picture, strategic, kind of less concrete things before you can really get to the writing. Of course, once you've got a North Star, I will always recommend that you write with an outline. So plan the content that you're going to have, because in fiction, it's, you can wing it. They call it pantsing or plotting. And so some people like to plot everything very carefully. Others like to fly by the seat of their pants. When it comes to ghostwriting, pantsing it does not work. So
pantsing is a nightmare for the ghostwriter and the client.
So
because with an outline too, and I'm sure Laura will touch on it, you get the client to approve the outline.
Yes.
So you all know
everybody's on the same page, literally.
Yeah, because the client has expectations.
Yeah,
you've got to be really aligned about what that content's going to be, because if you write 50 or 60,000 words and then the client says, this isn't what I wanted,
right,
then whose fault is that? So be really clear about what's going into the outline, get it signed off. Then you can kind of move into the content production side, which is, where everybody wants to dive in from the beginning. Once you've done that, of course, you've got to do editing. Then it's going through all of the sort of preparation for publication. So you've got formatting, you've got cover design, title, you know, getting it all set up on the sales platforms. Like there's a lot of like little steps in that stage. And then of course you've got publication. But before you get to publication, you've got to be thinking about the marketing long before you ever get to that stage. If you wait until publication day, it's much too late. So
Right.
in the traditional publishing world, there's about a year-long lead time between when the book is finished and when it's published. So all of that time is spent marketing, doing the sales into the industry. That time gives them enough runway to generate interest, to, you know, to get the book the momentum it needs to sell. But if you're working in someone's business, they don't want to wait a year for that to work. They've paid you all this money, you know,
Right.
They've been talking about it with their friends, like they've got that kind of emotional momentum. The book needs to be marketed as you're writing. So say it takes you 6 months to write the book, that's 6 months of marketing time. So you've also got to be thinking about that simultaneously with the client. And it really helps to be able to advise them. This is another service that you can add, sort of like Jen was saying, with all of the other things you can kind of tack on. Marketing advisory is a big deal. So I'm not saying that you should do all of the marketing implementation, because that can be a whole other job in itself.
Yeah, no, save that for somebody else.
Yes, but if you can tell them what to do and at what points in the process.
Be part of the team and
Yeah. That
offer.
makes you an advisor, and
Yes.
that's really valuable. It repositions you as a partner rather than a service provider.
Fantastic. Liz, anything that you do differently or in addition to, or what's your process like?
Well, I start out pretty much the same as Laura, because actually Laura trained me. I
There
took
you
her
go.
training before she had the AWAI course.
Mhm.
So I use her process, you know, who is the reader, figuring out an outline. I work a lot with transcripts of interviews, as Laura does also. And so when I'm getting ready to interview one of my clients for the current section of the book, I usually start with a bunch of questions. And sometimes it's just working through the outline step by step, asking them, well, what do you want to say about this? And tell me about that. And the next step. And other times it's going back to what we talked about maybe a few weeks ago and saying, hey, you know, there's a little hole here. Can you fill this in for me? So I work from transcripts of interviews, and that really helps me to capture their voice.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, you know, one of my clients was a millennial, and he turned everything into an adverb. My God. Actually, truly, finally, realistically, you know, there were just adverbs on, you know, 3 or 4, you know, everywhere. So anytime I'm editing or using Grammarly or some tool, I say, no, you got to leave all those adverbs in there, or a lot of them, because that's how he speaks. Another client of mine grew up in Minnesota, and I don't know if it's a regional dialect or something, but there are times when I want to rearrange the words. I'm going to flip them around in the way that he says it. And Grammarly wants to flip them around too. And I just say, no. That piece, that sentence that I copied and pasted from that transcript into here, that's how he speaks. So I need to leave that there. So that's really the gift of working with transcripts. And, you know, and sometimes the book will kind of meander, but having a North Star, like Laura said, really helps me to stay on track. You know, sometimes we'll get into a really interesting conversation, but I'll say, you know, I love that. Let's put that into a little parking lot over here. And maybe that can be our next book. or an article that we give to Accounting Today or something like that. So I try to use everything that they say, because some of these people I talk to have just such fascinating ideas that I want to bring as much of that to the world as I possibly can somehow.
I love that. Jen, anything different from you?
Well, I just want to raise a point that Liz brought up, that part of the tension with AI in our world, right? And part of why ghostwriters, I think, will both continue to exist and continue to do really well is Liz talked about, you put it in the editor or the Grammarly, and Grammarly wants to change it. Grammarly wants to smooth it. Grammarly and many other AI editing and writing tools want to make it sound like everything else. So in some ways, as the ghostwriting editor, your job is to be that defender of the voice.
Yes.
Because what's going to make your client stand out in the market is that they have lived experience. They have a unique story. They're telling a personal process. A lot of the people that I've been working with these days are kind of like high ticket professionals. They're selling consulting or coaching or like a kind of a high end product that costs a couple of $1,000s. People don't want to pay that kind of money for something that sounds just like everything else.
Exactly.
They want to see that it's unique. And you're like, okay, so we're going to tell your unique stories and we're going to make your book professionally polished, but your book is still going to sound like you. When you put your prompts into Claude, because I've had clients that they have Claude doing their blog, or they're working with a chat GPT for their social media. And it's like, okay, but when we put these things, the conversations we've had and that I've written up and what you're getting from your social media, one of these things sounds very bland and one of these sounds very much like me. But, I make it sound like I sound. And it is a place where we can make a difference for our clients and really help them stand out. Because, I mean, if you use zero AI in your life, sometimes it's very slow. But if you use 100% AI, it's just slop.
Right.
It's unusable junk. So somewhere in the middle, maybe I want to use an AI tool to process the client transcript so that they and I can just talk, and I don't visibly take any notes, but it's all being transcribed. And then I can follow up. These are where the holes are. These are where we're saying too much about this. Or
Right.
sometimes, ghostwriting, it helps if you have a good listening ear and you're very empathetic, because some people do work through a few of their life's traumas as they're writing their book. And you're like, that is a
Get
beautiful
ready.
That's a beautiful story. That's wonderful. We might save that for the appendix, for an article, for
Or the memoir, or
we might put that aside and never mention that again. Yes.
but that's again part of something that humans that only we can do, and being able to discern it, and being able to, while it's about the author, it's really about the reader, and knowing that and bringing that forward from your copywriting training. And that's why copywriters, because of the persuasive training, because of the understanding of how to keep somebody engaged in a conversation moving, that's why it's such a perfect fit here. I do want to, because we're going to talk about how to stand out, which we've already got some great ideas there, and about getting started. But I do want to just talk about how ghostwriters get paid, in case and how it differs from like traditional copywriters or content writers. Mm-hmm. And Laura, if you wouldn't mind, and again, whatever you're comfortable revealing, but what is the typical process as far as getting hired and getting paid goes from your perspective?
So the way I have done that is to focus almost exclusively on my network. I don't write an email list. I have on and off in the past. Recently, I've started doing more of my own LinkedIn because I'm just seeing how effective that is. But it's all networking for me. It's every time I have a new client, I am thinking about who do they know, and not just for the sake of getting something out of them, but for what I can offer. Because ultimately, like, this has to be a two-way street. You know, they're getting a great service out of it, you're getting a good living out of it, but you've got to be actually really connected to that person. And so it matters a lot if you like them. You're going to spend a lot of your life talking to this person. So it really helps if you actually know them a bit.
Mhm.
And people do business with people they know and people they like. And it helps a lot with, you know, these kind of high ticket sales. If you've been in the room with somebody, you know, like the scope of what you can charge for a ghostwriting project, you know, it varies a lot, but at the low end, say 10 grand, at the high end, pick a number, you know, but, you know, 100 at the very, you know, from, you know, normal ghostwriters. I'm not talking about someone who's writing like Beyonce's, you know, they need to be getting quite a lot more, but, you know, in kind of the day-to-day flow of business, between that range is a reasonable expectation. And so people do not spend that kind of money with someone that they've just got a few emails from.
Right.
You have to have a lot of trust, right? Emails help with that, but there's just nothing that beats getting in the room with someone. At the very least, have a call with them, get to know them a bit before you decide that we're going ahead with this, and do that for the sake of their protection as well as yours, because they only get one shot at telling this story the first time. And so it really matters that the writer who tells that story does a great job with it. It's a big responsibility. And so I think for me, really leaning into that network effect is really important, and just showing up as your best self. You know? I think be a good person is a great place to start. But, you know, of course, you've got to bring a body of work and everything. In terms of how you get paid, I think it's unrealistic to expect full payment upfront. So I always take a deposit, a 10% deposit to secure the project. And then the remaining 90% I split into 3 payments across the course of the project. So one when we start, one halfway through, and one at the end. It just means that everybody's incentives are aligned. And I think this is where a lot of trust has degraded over time, particularly online. Incentives are not aligned a lot of the time. If I get paid everything up front, I don't have that much incentive to do an amazing job. And the client knows that. And that's quite scary. If they don't have to pay me anything until the end of the project, they have no real incentive to get the project finished. You know, so that you've got to be aligned in how those incentives are managed. I think I personally don't take royalties unless the client has secured a contract with a traditional publisher. So most small businesses, which is who we're all kind of working with, don't really have the setup to handle royalty payments. And so I do not want to be introducing a whole new like payment system into their accounting.
Right.
The complication of that is just through the roof, and like the friction is very high, the frustration potential is very high. I don't want any of that in my relationship with the client.
And again, knowing that their goal really isn't necessarily the sales of the book, it's the sales of their service or whatever. That's what their business is. So I wouldn't think royalties would make sense in that.
And even clients that I talk to who want to be Amazon bestsellers, we still kind of emphasize that they shouldn't expect to change their life.
Yes.
To make a living as an author.
Right.
Like that is not the goal. And sometimes when then people are like, well, are you expecting royalties? I'm like, no, I don't want any royalties. I would rather be paid more to do the project. But another piece of that for me is that in certain categories on Amazon, to be a day one bestseller, because all you need is the picture like one time, like I'm number one.
Right.
You know, that's less than 100 copies of the book. And so royalties on that are not going to change my life. It's not worth not worth the fight.
For context, royalties are usually a very small percentage. And so you might get, even if you are the author of the book, you might get $3 per book.
Yeah, this isn't like direct response, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so it's the trade-off of focusing on royalties for the client as well is just not worth it. Much better to focus for the ghostwriter on a sustainable level of fee income, and for the client to focus on what's the high ticket item I can sell that's going to make all of this worth it.
Fantastic. Liz, now with you staying within your world, the accounting world, how first of all, how did you build that network? Or was it the network that you already had? And then how do you work payments for big ghostwriting book projects as well?
Well, a lot of the people in my network I got to know by going to accounting conferences. And that was and continues to be the main method of marketing that I have, because I rationalize that anybody there is a potential client.
Yes.
You know, from the speakers to the other accountants attending to the tech firm vendors who were there.
Right.
So I reach out to them and give them cards. Now, another way that I've built my network is that I also do a podcast for CPA trend lines where I interview people who were sort of on the cutting edge of doing things differently in accounting. I've been doing that for about 2 years. We just published our 100th episode a couple months ago. So that's been really interesting, because now I go to conferences and people know my name, which is kind of weird because I never really did any of this to for my own fame or my own branding, but more just to get the ideas out there.
And the connections. I mean, these have to be
Yes.
everybody that you're speaking to has to be a potential book client.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Yes. And that's kind of how it has happened. And you asked about pricing. You know, I have used just about every pricing formula under the roof. For my first couple of projects, because I really didn't know what this was going to be like. I took my existing pricing for blog posts and case studies and kind of cut it down a little bit. And I said, okay, you know, this is going to be the price for the book. It's going to be based on word count over these kind of broad 500 word ranges. And let's do monthly installments, and it will be up to both of us to kind of keep the writing and the timing of the payments kind of in sync. So I've done that. And I did that for first couple of clients because I really didn't know what this project was going to be, the scope of it. Then as I got more comfortable, I started setting package fees. I said, okay, this is the fee. It costs X dollars to do this book. And like Laura does, I ask for deposit up front. And then I usually work with the client to figure out, well, what frequency and what amounts of payments are sustainable for you to manage. So I kind of work that in. And then, surprise, surprise, one of my clients, because she's a CPA and she wanted to write off the whole cost of it. Last year, she said, oh, I'm going to pay you the balance of what I owe you for this book now, even though we haven't finished it. And so that was kind of a nice little windfall. Then for yet another client where I was doing a combination of editing, revision, updating, ghostwriting for a book that he had previously published that turned into several books. And there was a promise that it might be many, many, many more books. I said, okay, I don't know the scope of this. We don't know how many books this is going to be. I'm going to give you a third of my calendar and it's going to cost you X dollars a month. And so we did that and did 2 books out that way. So, you know, whatever
So you
works for
customize
you.
it per client, per scope that you know at the time.
Yes.
Excellent, excellent. So there's lots of ways of
Yes.
attacking this, but I do want to welcome Steve Gordon. Hi, Steve. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Katie. I appreciate you having me back. And
So for everyone that might not know Steve yet, Steve is the co-founder of Million Dollar Author, correct?
that's
And
correct. Yeah.
founder and CEO. And I know you have some other businesses too, but we're here to talk about that and that business in particular. And in this business, you are an agency for CEOs looking to have books published, correct?
Yes.
And you, how many ghostwriters do you work with at a time?
Gosh, I think we've got 10 on the team right now.
10. Okay. I
Jen
know
Adams was one, and she's amazing.
That's great. And I know you have a specific process that you work with your writers. Could you just walk us through that, just to give, we're just talking about the scope of what ghostwriting can look like in today's massive content need and need for people to really stand out and build their authority.
Yeah, it's super important right now. You're seeing the explosion of the personal brand. You're seeing many business owners and corporate executives who feel like they've got to now get themselves out there. And so creating content is huge. And I hear all the time from people, well, can't I just do that with ChatGPT? And what we've found is that for most business people, they don't have enough sort of a backlog of content that they can load into it so that ChatGPT can say anything intelligent that they would actually say.
Right.
And so, when we still see a big need for human writers, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. In terms of our process, we really try and create an environment. Hopefully, and Jen could probably answer this, that's ideal for the writer. In other words, we don't want you to be stuck on meetings with the client all day long. We put someone kind of in between so that you can focus on what you do best, which is the writing. And so we've got kind of a compressed format. We have a business book strategist that does interviews of the client to gather kind of their IP and pull it out of them. And then the writer gets all of that material and any background that the client provides, and then can kind of focus on the writing piece.
On the writing. That's awesome. Jen, how was it from your perspective, from the writer's perspective?
From the writer's perspective, it was really good because, the book strategist had already done the part where they laid out the outline of the book, and getting that outline, even if you change it later, starting from 80% and starting from a couple of hours of transcripts, of really getting the person to talk and to have them talk long enough and freely enough that their voice comes through.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of business people, when you only talk to them for 5 or 10 minutes, they're giving you their polished pitch, the thing they worked on with a coach. It doesn't sound like they would sound, later in the networking section or, interacting in real life. So, getting to a point where you capture their sound and being able to bring that into the book and being able to just focus on being the voice and bringing the voice to life is great, because you can just get in there, put on your, today I'm a solar panel consultant hat, and then you just do that. And you can really focus on that part until the first draft is finished, when you go back and get feedback. But I mean, also in other ghostwriting processes, it is a little bit like that, where you do a lot of material gathering up front. And as a solo, that can be very time consuming. And then you have to write and manage the revisions back and forth, and working with Steve's agency, because he has a team, the book strategists, and then kind of book success managers who guide the revisions along. I could move on to the next book while my team partner was working with the CEO or the person to be like, okay, no, you need to finish reviewing chapter 8. Like, you did 1 through 7. Why can't we review 8 through 9? Like, we need to, someone else
Yeah.
doing those pieces to move it along so that you stayed in your zone of excellence and like really just doing the writing part, and someone else did the
Yeah.
chasing and the payments.
Well,
Things about
and-
writing that sometimes I don't like.
Katie, that came out of my experience kind of, running my own. And when I started the business, I was basically doing freelance copywriting.
Right.
And then I was juggling the client management and the meetings and all of this. And so we just tried to design a process that was optimized for writers to do the best writing. And I know from experience, my own experience, that requires focus and large chunks of uninterrupted time. And if you're trying to juggle all the other things, it's really hard to do.
Yeah, yeah. I know that sounds like such a great way of breaking in, of getting some books, some titles under your belt, of actually getting the experience, which leads me to my next question is, I would love to hear from all of you. We heard your individual stories, but if you were starting out right now and wanted to be a ghostwriter, Jen, what advice would you give to yourself?
There's kind of two things, what would my goals want to be? If I wanted to have a writing business, I would get business clients and then look at ways that I could insert a book into their marketing materials. If I just wanted to write books, I would look for an agency, someone who would let me do the writing part. Steve's was not the first writing agency that I had worked with. I've worked with a lot of agencies over my career, and I do love, outsourcing isn't really the right word because you're giving it to a very professional person, but just separating the writing part,
focusing on the writing
part. And it can make it so that you can just be with the words, which sounds so zen and woo, but so enjoyable, and you get a lot done.
Romantic. That's the life of the writer. Laura, how about you? I know you you had such success and believe so fully in content. Network and building your network. What would you say to somebody? Well, I know you mentioned LinkedIn, but did I steal your thunder there?
No, not at all. I think it's twofold, and it's both of those things. I think building your network is never wasted effort. And so I would go out to all of the people who kind of fit the bill of who I want to work with and say, what can I write for you? Like write for free. I think this is the thing, like when you're getting started, everybody likes to talk about charge what you're worth and all this stuff. And of course, you need to get to that point. But when you don't have a portfolio of work to show, you need to prove that you can do it. Like I spoke about trust before, people need to know that you can do it, and they only know that if they can see it. And so if you cannot convince someone to let you write for them, write your own stuff.
Yes.
Create a portfolio of work, have something to show, prove that you can do what you're claiming. And then it becomes much easier to say, hey, I wrote you this blog post. Would you like to run it for free? And then they'll be like, great, we got a whole lot of engagement from that. We haven't had any content. Show people that you can do it. Be generous when you're leading a conversation towards a sale. Leave the ego at the door. And I wish I had kind of known that when I got started. I did some writing for free, but it chafed me so much. Now I think like that gets you in the door. And then later on, you can spin it up and it's fine. But early on, you've just got to get those wins. So that would be the first thing, is do some work for free. Be very tailored about who you're doing it for. Don't just do it for everybody. But LinkedIn is also an insanely good resource at the moment. It has 1.15 billion users. Less than 1% of them ever post.
Right.
Literally so much space for your content. So even if you just, it doesn't have to be every day. Post twice a week. Say something you know about writing. Say something you know about marketing. Just, again, build a portfolio of work there that people can see, oh, that person knows what they're talking about. And then, every now and then maybe share a case study or a success story, something that you learned on a project. Invite people to send you a message if they'd like to think about that for their own business. It can be really, really soft sell stuff, but there's still so much opportunity to get in front of people who are a fit for you. Connect with a bunch of people who have the audience that you want to write for. So if you want to write for CEOs, go and find people who are already working with CEOs, comment on their stuff, Posting your own content will show you up in the feed once. If you leave 20 comments on the feed, people are going to see you 20 times. So it's just about showing up, putting in a little legwork. There's still a lot of space in the market. And I think a lot of people feel like they've kind of missed the boat with this
Not
type of thing,
LinkedIn.
and you just haven't. The
Yeah.
only way to fail here is not to start.
100%. We've been talking so much about the whole LinkedIn strategy, and the beauty of the push and pull of it. You can push people by your content, and either in the writing space, in the marketing space, or in whatever specialty, whatever niche you're in. But then the pull, by commenting and making helpful comments, not just silly comments, helpful, useful, intriguing, that shows that you know that you have a connection with the audience, that you have answers, that you have solutions. That's how you pull people, like, oh, I need to go check, I need to check Laura out. And that's how these things, we're just seeing that happen in such a low stress way of connecting with people. So, okay, so that's good. We have the whole LinkedIn, we have the working the connection. Liz, now you again were very targeted in your world. And I just want to say, for anybody listening, you can substitute whatever niche you want whenever Liz says CPAs and accountants and CEOs. If you're into the veterinary market, if you're into healthcare, if you're into gardening, whatever, there are organizations, there are groups, there's opportunities to connect. The same strategy works for any of those. But Liz, what advice would you give you had really, it seemed like a pretty seamless transition, but is there anything that you would offer to somebody listening as maybe a jumpstart, or as a way to maybe leapfrog over some of the learning curves you had to go through?
Well, I would say, if you have any kind of professional experience at all, whether that's teacher, lawyer, doctor, veterinarian, psychotherapist, artist, painter, builder, whatever, lean into that. Find out where the industry publications are. Many of them are online, and many of them are starving for content.
Right.
So reach out to them and say, hey, I am a former ABCD, whatever it is that I do, and say, or I'm still doing this, and I'm also a trained writer. Can I write a couple of articles for your readers for free? Then provide a couple of ideas, do it for free, as Laura said, or for a minimal fee. I was very fortunate that one of the first places I reached out to was the Journal of Accountancy.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so few CPAs who write that they almost immediately hired me at a fairly high rate of pay, and that became my floor for payment.
Mm-hmm. Great.
So reach out. Don't hesitate to reach out to the publications that your audience reads.
Yeah, love that.
So, demonstrate your expertise.
Beautiful. And right, through actual submitting ideas, through comments, and through just being involved in the community. Steve, what advice would you give to somebody that wants to break into ghostwriting?
Well, I think Laura's right. When you're starting, sometimes you're going to have to start for free. One of the things that I would encourage people to do that makes you feel a little bit better about working for free is go find a product that you believe in that has an affiliate program, and practice your direct response copy skills.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always found that, those are sort of the things that really hone all of your writing, because you have to make every word count when you're trying to sell with words. And write a long form sales letter. write a series of emails that will help promote a product. Sign up for their affiliate program so you're making some money along the way. Yes, do all the LinkedIn things and the content and all of that, but you want to have some examples of longer form writing that you can share with people that are designed to persuade, because most business people are hiring you to write persuasively one way or another. And the more you can hone those skills, the better. One of the things that we often see lacking in the candidates that apply to work with us is they'll send us things that they're almost like fluff articles that they've written for themselves, right? And that's okay to write things on your own, but you want to write something that shows that you can research a topic, that you can think critically to build an argument and persuade a reader. And those are the sorts of things that are going to land you the first gigs. And so as you're doing it, just be thoughtful about, as you're doing that sort of free stuff at the beginning, be really thoughtful about what you're doing, because it's going to position you better to get the first few jobs.
Fantastic. Thank you. And Steve, we've talked a lot about ghostwriting books, and now through your agency, do you just focus on books, or do you work on presentations and all the other things as well?
We really focus on the book writing aspect of it when we work with ghostwriters. We feel like that's the most difficult problem to solve. AI is coming, and it's going to impact the industry. And in particular, it's going to impact the shorter form content pieces first. But what we sort of advise all of our clients is you need to write a book so you have all your best ideas in one place.
Right.
That needs to be done by a human being.
Yes.
So that's really where our focus is. And then we're now teaching them how to take and pull all the ideas apart using AI and create their content that way. So,
but even still, you need a human to manage that, to edit
Absolutely.
that, while there's going to be impact, the need for writers who understand persuasion, who understand the marketing journey is not going to go away, in my opinion. I think.
No, I agree. And I think, again, having those skills where you can look at the product of AI and, elevate up. So I'm actually getting more into copywriting than I've been in probably the last 5 years, because I sort of got to a point where my role didn't allow for me to write as much, which I miss. But now I can partner with AI. And I think that's one of the ways to really be thinking about it for folks, because everybody who's kind of coming into the business now is coming in with AI as a teammate.
Right.
So I'm able to iterate through leads or headlines or subheads in ways that would have taken me days or weeks in the past. But you have to have the skill to be able to tell, okay, now out of all of these iterations, what's good? And now what do I need to add to it to make it just right? So, yeah, but we focus on books. We feel like that's a long form piece of content that for most people isn't going to go away anytime soon.
Yeah, and we're just seeing the need for it. That is what makes it's people's business card these days for CEO or any kind of anybody in the C worlds of these corporations. It's their business card. It's their website now. It's everything that people. It's their control over the messaging that they're getting out. So I want to thank you all for joining us today. Let's see, Jade, if we have any questions, you can pop them up. But I do want to just encourage everyone to, if you're interested in ghostwriting, if this is something that appeals to you and that you can see the opportunities that it presents in the form of actually writing books, if this is, if writing a book is on your bucket list, if writing the book is something that you greatly aspire to, here's a great way of doing it with in someone else's voice, in a way that will help them get their message out. I want to highly encourage you to check out Laura's training. It is How to be a ghostwriter. Liz is giving it thumbs up. We have a link up here right now. It breaks down that process in detail. It goes about marketing yourself, finding clients, the interviews, the research, all of everything that's baked into this career that, Laura, you've been doing for 10 years now, and your enthusiasm and love for it and professionalism around it comes through in such a wonderful way. So I do want to encourage you that this is definitely the time to check it out. This opportunity is just getting bigger. And like Steve says, this is the actual ghostwriting, these books for thought leaders, for professionals, that needs a writer that understands how to do it. So I want to encourage that. And then Jade, if we have any questions for our panel, or oh, great, Brandy, thank you. Happy that you got something out of this. And all right, I see lots of thank yous in the chat, so we appreciate that. I love bringing these conversations to you. I love introducing you to these experts that are living the writer's life and have just built these amazing careers. All right then, well, thank you again, and I appreciate everybody's time today. Bye.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.